name is Kristen Avalos, and I thank you for joining me for this 2022 astrology forecast. This is part one of a three-part series because 2022 is so huge of a year that I couldn't possibly contain everything in one part. And I am a Scorpio. I have my Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Pluto all in Scorpio. So I am looking to give a deep dive into what's going on so that you can see with clarity and with truth what is really happening beyond what we're being told. So if you are interested in learning more about how the astrology can help to forecast what we can expect to see next year, then this is the place for you. And if you are into history and looking at how the astrological cycles correspond with what is going on, not only in our current history, but also the past, then I think you are going to love this three-part series that I have here for you. So please, if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel if you'd like to get all three parts. And I will include the links in the section below when they're ready. So you can also look down there for those. Or sign up for my email updates, and I can email out the videos as they're completed. So a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Kristen Avalos. I am a spiritual mindset coach and a student of evolutionary astrology. And as a spiritual mindset coach, my philosophy is that personal growth is a path to life purpose, that the challenges that each of us face are a path to our truest potential, and that we are given choice as a tool to learn. And I think we have all been given these choices, especially in the past year. And I think that we have all been looking at the world in a little bit more of a spiritual way. Now, as an evolutionary astrologer, I believe that the collective consciousness really is a mirror of what is going on within our individual consciousness. And this consciousness is in part patterned by the planetary movement and what our personal birth chart has given to us to work with in this lifetime. And I also believe that personal healing, the work that we do internally to learn about ourselves and find out what these experiences are teaching us, it does lead to higher states of consciousness that can play a role on an interplanetary level, so on this planet. And I believe that it really can reverberate out in ways that we are not even conscious of. And I believe that the truth is you are a sovereign being of light. I believe that you have divinity within you and that you came to this lifetime with a specific purpose. You are here to heal your karma or to make things right and to evolve into a more conscious and creative being. So what you're going to learn in part one here today is I'm going to give you a big picture perspective of what is going on to act as a framework for you to think about what I'll be talking about for the specific year of 2022. And I feel like having that framework will help everything else to make sense, even if you don't know much about astrology or you're still trying to figure out how to connect it to the bigger world. So the big picture is, in my opinion, the shifting from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. I'm going to be talking about the Roaring 20s redux, as I call it. So the setting up of a new decade, where I'll talk about the important aspects that took place in 2020 and 2021. And I'll be talking about the karmic nodes of Gemini and Sagittarius, the eclipse cycles that happen every 18 months. I'll be going into Saturn in Aquarius, which it will continue to do in 2022. And I'll be talking about the Saturn-Uranus squares that have been taking place throughout 2021, again, to give you the foundation for what I will talk about in parts 2 and 3, which those are going to be hopefully equally as fascinating as this one is. And I'm really excited to share those parts with you too. And I like to say knowledge is power. Just let me move myself here. Knowledge is power and curiosity is king. And so astrology gives us a tool where we can accurately look at the cycles of time, the cycles of the astrological ages, and what those ages signified for humanity. And through astrology, we are not fated, but we are controlled and dictated by our astrological patterns. And astrologer Robert Fitzgerald believes that these patterns may even be an integral part of our genetic structure. And the history of how we got here, where we are today, has been orchestrated through these cycles of astrology. And how we move forward is going to be dependent in our consciousness and our ability to see things in a higher level of consciousness, one that we didn't have before, because astrology has been something that is occult, which means hidden. Yet the people that are in power are aware of the power of these cycles. And so I believe that through this Aquarian age, astrology is going to be a tool that is really a scientific tool, but that works very well with intuition and the more Piscean energy. And I do think that we will see a renaissance when it comes to astrology, but it may be vilified first, as we're seeing some things come out about, which I won't get into right this moment. So the shifting of ages, what is really going on? That I think is something that we've all been asking ourselves for the past 2 years. And I'm going to give you the 30,000 foot perspective. I'm going to take you up, and there's higher levels that you can go to, but I'm going to stick with the 30,000 foot perspective. So astrologer Robert Fitzgerald, author of Signs of the Times, says this: humanity is on the threshold of a golden age of truly mythical proportions. We are also in a period of increasingly destructive energies, very possibly on the verge of extinction. How we got here is no accident, and where we go from here is up to us. This is a common scenario that reverberates through the prophecy of all religions. And the emphasis there was mine. How we got here is no accident, and where we go from here is up to us. And I believe that 2022 is really going to be that tipping point of deciding who is determining where we go. He says, we are not coming to the end of the world, but of our present cycle of ages. And so I just want to say that this is a very big deal. We are in the end of a cycle. And what we do, what you do, what I do, the choices that we make is determining how we begin a whole new cycle. So I feel like that is incredibly exciting. You should be proud of yourself if you are here living through these times, because your soul did not get here by accident either. 2100 years in the making, the shifting of ages, that is how many years that an age lasts. And of course, there are 12 zodiac in the cycle. And so the whole cycle is about 26,000 years, but each individual age is 2100 years. Now we have been in the age of Pisces, and Pisces rules religion and spirituality. And of course, we've seen the creation of Judeo-Christian religions. We've seen religious wars. Religion really has been a huge theme in the past 2100 years. It is about the arts and creativity. It's about illusion and delusion. It's about emotions and addictions. And it's about hospitals and prisons and mental institutions. And so if we look at the past 2100 years with those themes in mind, I think we really can paint a very interesting story. Now we're also in the era of Pisces, which is a further breakdown of the greater cycle. So an age is 2100 years, and the eras are a sub time period within that cycle. And so it began, the era of Pisces, in 1980 and goes until the end of the Piscean age in 2160 BC. So I think that's about 180, to 200 years within these subcycles. And of course, between 1980 and 2160, where we are, currently, we're seeing a lot to do with prophecy and revelation and good versus evil. And as we move into the age of Aquarius, we're asking the question, is a global peaceful civilization possible? Is that something that we can move into by 2160 BC? Just move myself. Oh, and I just want to say too, if you are listening to this, and driving or whatever, you definitely can listen, but I do have slides. And so some of the things that I will be talking about, there will be some photo examples that you might find helpful to look at. So it's up to you, but just know that the certain slides are supported by those images. Anyways, the Astro Twins say, in the coming decade, we will witness the convergence of many cycles, secular and non-secular, ancient and contemporary in orientation. The period is circumscribed by generational astrology, with the outer planets Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto returning to key positions they occupied during pivotal points in American history, echoing watershed events of our past, including the founding of the United States more than 2 centuries ago. This is, again, really, really significant. And just know that I will be focusing for this reason on an American perspective, not only because America is experiencing some of the most powerful transits that a country can experience, but also because I am American and I love American history specifically. So, but just know that what is taking place in America right now and also in 2022 especially will play a role in the whole global world, and it will impact in some way every other country and nation. That's what I feel from this. So keep that in mind as we go through. The power of seeing. That is what we're really learning through this Pisces time. Astrologer Rick Levine says, as planetary cycles affect the affairs of individuals, so too do they inform cultural affairs, the rise and fall of civilizations, and the evolution of ideas and technology. It might as well be the same event with different aged eyes. There is this memory that creates these brush fires that keep coming up again and again. And I feel that this and what we'll be seeing in 2022 especially really is about breaking generational patterns, learning from our ancestors, forgiving our ancestors for not knowing what they didn't know at the time, taking responsibility. Again, this is the karma piece. It's really about learning to take responsibility for yourself and for your life. And we'll definitely go into the generational piece more when we get to part 3 and we talk about the Pluto return and the node switch of Taurus and Scorpio. And as the philosopher Spinoza said, if you want the present to be different than the past, you have to study the past. So that's why I'm going to really point out some specific historical periods that I feel are significant so that we can learn about them and see them in a new light. Putting 2020 and 2021 in perspective. So I have some photos here that I think sum up the past 2 years. And of course, there has been just an explosion of so much in these 2 years. It's hard to put it into pictures, but there it is. The Roaring 20s Redux. So now I'm going to be setting up this new decade that we saw happen in 2020. The Astro Twins said the years 2020 and 2021 are a prelude to major transformations in our social, economic, and political ecologies. It's really been a runway preparing us for 2022 and the American Revolution 2.0, which is what I'll be talking about in part 3. So let's start with Pluto and Capricorn, which started in 2008, and that transit ends in 2024. So Pluto is a slow moving planet, and it goes through every nook and cranny and points out what isn't working. It is, and we have seen it, it has been exposing some of the most scandalous information that we have seen in a long time. So Pluto, being the ruler of Scorpio, is about secrets, wealth, other people's money, and power. and the power hungry. What comes along with that: manipulation, control, very dark recesses of the human collective. As it's made its way through Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn, we have seen the brunt of the exposure come around people in authority. Saturn is specifically related to the father, authority figures, father figures. We have seen corporations in the limelight, banks, academia, big pharma, churches. Again, we're seeing secrets, we're seeing exposure, we're seeing scandal in these areas. And one example is, why are all the CEOs stepping down? In the beginning of 2021, there was a huge list of CEOs that resigned. And the true reason of why that happened, I don't know specifically. I have some ideas. Again, I think it has to do with secrets. Think it has to do with wealth. I think it has to do with being power hungry. And that's what I'll say about that for right now, but we'll see. And of course, during 2008 and beyond, we had the bank bailouts of 2008. And so people were absolutely up in arms that the banks were given this free pass, while millions of people lost their homes and their livelihoods. There was the scandalous exposure of Hollywood, with Harvey Weinstein being the person that, got the brunt of the backlash. And I think we all know he's not the only one. There was even sex abuse within the UN, which had been this simmering issue for many years and has only just come to the light during this period. And I don't feel that we've heard the end of it. I feel that as Pluto continues to make its way out of Capricorn and into Aquarius, hopefully we'll see some resolution with that. And we've also seen employees, just people quitting their jobs in droves, in many cases due to abuses of power by organizations and corporations. Astrologer David Odyssey says structural flaws, which is Saturn, structural flaws demand transformation, and that is Scorpio for you. And we have been seeing that slowly but surely. And then in 2020, we had Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn all in Capricorn for the first time, the three of them together, since 1285. And Pluto is about evolution, evolving, transforming, and Pluto has been revealing the hidden puppet masters, while Saturn is about karma. And it's been saying that the time is up, and now the exposure is happening and it can't be kept secret any longer. And with Jupiter, Jupiter expands whatever it comes into contact with. And if it comes into contact with something that is not so good, it's only going to expand on what's there. So if it's good, it will bring more good. If it's not good, it will bring more that's not good. And of course, we have seen the exposure of shocking secrets thanks to Jupiter being here. The big date in 2020 that all astrologers kind of knew was going to be an absolute shit show happened on January 12th of 2020, and it was the Saturn-Pluto conjunction at 22 degrees of Capricorn. And astrologers knew that when these two planets come together, we are talking about wealth, business wealth, specifically. We are talking about power, specifically the power of government and politics and the elite. And we are talking about control. And so the hierarchies of who has the power and the money and who doesn't. And I feel like it's so important to keep that in mind, because everything that followed in 2020 and of course in 2021, this is what you need. These are the themes to keep in mind. Not really health or, no, when it's Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn, Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, we're talking about wealth and power and control. That's what we're talking about. So keep that in mind. And as we've seen starting 2008, it's not always pretty to look at. Saturn-Pluto conjunctions occur every 33 to 38 years. They happen 3 times each century, and Rick Levine says it's sort of like a waltz. This conjunction last happened in Libra, an air sign, in 1982, and we were introduced to the age of the personal computer, which again, keep that in mind. The first meetup here between these two planets since 1518. Astrologer Rick Levine classifies these periods as especially challenging historical periods marked by a pervasive quality of intense contraction, eras of international crisis and conflict, empowerment of reactionary forces and totalitarian impulses, organized violence and oppression, all sometimes marked by lasting traumatic effects. You can say that again, Rick. Breaking the age-old patterns. So the 33-year waltz, Rick Levine describes as a time of boundary creation, boundary destruction, and then the adaptation and adjustment phase. And to me, that really sounded like the problem, reaction, solution formula that we've seen and heard about so many times, where the problem is created, the reaction is caused, people start to react to it, and then a solution is provided. And of course, we have seen that with the problem of a pandemic, a reaction, people want it fixed, they want it to go away, and the solution just happens to be, we all know what the solution is. And we really have to follow the money when it comes to Saturn and Pluto, as I said, because that is where the focus really is. And so we have these boom, bust, and bailout cycles. And if you look at the political cartoon, there's 3 witches around a pot that says US economy. This is for people that are listening only. And here they say, when shall we 3 meet again? It's an equation. The cycles of recessions, the Federal Reserve, the inflation that is experienced. We saw this in 2008. And this is really about debt slavery. It's about the control through money. And the reason that I believe this is true is because on November 16th of 1914, the US Federal Reserve began operations as Saturn and Pluto, who were both retrograde, united at 1 degree of Cancer. And of course, right before that, we had the financial panic of 1914, and the Fed really hasn't solved any problems that it claimed it would solve, because we have continued to see these cycles over and over again. So we know something is not working, and Pluto is going to, I believe, help us figure that out within these next 2 years. We also have the funding of both sides of wars. So the Saturn-Pluto unions of 1914 and 15 dovetailed with the start of World War I and stretched into the next Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Leo in 1947, which aligned with the end of World War II. Was it really the end of the war? That is the question, because with Saturn and Pluto, they are interested in control. And is it a one world government that they're looking for? Is the end goal total control of everything? And in 1947, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, was established to foster worldwide fiscal cooperation. But again, was this just a way to get the money in the hands of fewer and fewer people? And I think that we have been seeing that to be the case, but I will go into that more in later parts. But I think this is a fascinating way to look at some of the major global impacts that these Saturn-Pluto conjunctions have had in history, and of course the history that we're living through now. But again, it's about seeing it with new eyes, seeing it for what it really is. So in 1914, or right before that, in 1913, there was a committee report, Pujo Committee report, that said there is an established and well-defined identity and community of interest between a few leaders of finance, which has resulted in great and rapidly growing concentration of the control of money and credit in the hands of these few men. And of course, we've all become familiar with the names Rothschild and Rockefeller, even though we had probably never heard those names before 2020, but they were two of, them and their cronies were two of the key people that wanted the Federal Reserve created because it would be of benefit to them. And it was done in secret. They did not want anyone to know what they were scheming at, because it basically helped to give them a monopoly over power. And not only that, it allowed them to make the people responsible for the debt and these money cycles through inflations and recessions. Again, this is, if you don't believe this, or if you think it's a conspiracy, just look at Pluto, and Pluto's not going to lie to you. And here's a great comic of the rich in the stands overlooking, two middle-class families surrounded by lions. And the man in the stand says, "How do you get yourself in these pickles?" And of course, the system is designed to get us in these pickles. And the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is a masterpiece on the Federal Reserve, its creation, and what it means for us. And as I have, throughout the research of these webinars, have referred to as Grandpa Griffin, he said what the bankers wanted and what many businessmen wanted also was to intervene in the free market and tip the balance of interest rates downward to favor debt over thrift. To accomplish this, the money supply simply had to be disconnected from gold and made more plentiful, or as they described it, more elastic. Through the creation of the Federal Reserve, money was no longer based on anything of value. Money could be created out of thin air. And the more debt that you had created interest that went to be real money for the people in control, because they were then able to create more. And this, this is what they call fiat money. And it has not been kind to any of us, let's just say that much. So the Astro Twins say, the Saturnian and Plutonic realms contain vast wealth, whether found in our external resources or collective archetypes deep in the human psyche. Are you tough enough to endure the challenge and not fall victim to fake news and groupthink? Now we'll talk a little bit about the eclipse cycles, which have taken place in Gemini and Sagittarius. So Gemini and Sagittarius are opposite each other on the zodiac wheel. And the true node, or the north node, has been in the sign of Gemini, and the south node has been in the sign of Sagittarius. And these have to do with the karmic adjustments, the balances between these two nodes. Now the north node, where Gemini is the direction that we're sort of moving into, the south node, where Sagittarius has been speaking to what is being released. And as I mentioned, these eclipse cycles are an 18-month cycle, and it began on May 5th of 2020 and goes through December 3rd of 2021. And we will then go into the Taurus Scorpio eclipse cycle, which I'll speak about in part 3. And Gemini and Sagittarius are helping us to explore dualities about knowing versus understanding, about the ego mind versus the higher mind, about globalism versus nationalism. And we have seen that very literally in a big way. We've seen border policies, censorship and fake news, a lot related to communication and media. And Gemini does also relate to social media, local travel and trade, and also new points of view. And it's interesting, the last time that there was the Gemini Sagittarius eclipses was in 2001. And local travel after 9/11 really was a huge thing back then. And so it's interesting that there has been another global, worldwide event during this time that has turned us, for the time being, to more local travel, and less of us are traveling globally. And there's just an image from The Economist talking about this shift. exploring dualities. So we are looking at reality versus illusion. We're looking at higher wisdom versus ego thinking. And we're looking at truth versus lies. And again, we're doing this all within the context of who really has the power and what is their agenda. What do they want you to believe, and what benefit do they gain from hiding the truth from you? And of course, this is just an image that we are aware that the control of media has decreased and gone into the hands of fewer and fewer companies over the past decade, especially in this era of Pisces. And I'll go a little bit more into that in part 2. So future proves past. This was an article in 2001 from the last eclipse cycle there. And the headline is, Bush's selling of Iraq war, where does the truth lie? So again, we were looking at that situation and we were really trying to see what was real, what was a lie, what was the bigger agenda behind that. And this is an author of a book that came out, said that Bush employed a political propaganda campaign aimed at manipulating sources of public opinion. And again, during this eclipse cycle, we have also seen that quite clearly, at least most of us have seen that. The practice with the eclipse cycles, as I said, is really about balance. So the balance with Gemini and Sagittarius, it is about freeing your mind, allowing yourself to be open to things that are different than what you normally might listen to. It's about staying present and cultivating deep listening. So really listening to what is not being said and the words under what is being said. And I feel that has been a very key thing for us to keep in mind during this time. And then we had the great conjunction of 2020, which was between, great conjunction is what they call the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction. So this happens every 20 years, and it has been in Earth signs for the last 150 years, pretty much. And the Earth focus is about material security, material resources. And this time, on December 21st of 2020, it happened at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And this is the first time that this great conjunction has happened in an air sign since 1802. And also with it being at 0 degrees, we know that this is the start of something new. And air signs, and for the next 150 years, all of the great conjunctions are going to occur in air signs of either Aquarius, Gemini, or Libra. And this is about creating with consciousness. So we're moving from the material and the tangible, and we're going to start learning how to build with our creative consciousness. Saturn and Aquarius. It gave us a little preview on March 1st of 2020. Keep these dates in mind. March 1st of 2020, and it will stay here until March 7th of 2023. And as I mentioned, Saturn is the actual ancient ruler of Aquarius. So it's not completely out of place in Aquarius, but as we'll see when we talk about the Saturn Uranus squares of 2021 that it's an interesting experience. And we have experienced during this time censorship, lockdowns, technocrats, we the people versus authority. We have really been looking at this idea of surveillance. We are talking a lot more about air, climate, and space. And of course, this Aquarian air energy that we have been speaking to, the internet, and how we moved from, personal computers to internet, to internet on phones. This is all that Aquarian energy. Looking at the last time we had Saturn in Aquarius, it was between 1991 and 1994. And this was around the time that Ray Kurzweil came out with the book Age of Intelligent Machines. That was in 1992. And then we also had the advent of the World Wide Web in 1993. So we can expect definitely to see new ways of having technology into our lives. And we have seen them. I won't say the words because I don't want to get censored. The Astro Twins say, now our sights are set on innovation and massive changes that will reform the way society is organized, governed, and serviced. Will all the technological advances set us free or limit our freedom and privacy? How can we smash through the rules while adhering to time-tested principles, unleash our rebellious individualism while fostering communities based on equity and accessibility? We have 2 years to unpack this riddle, which is bound to bring more incendiary uprising and backlash than we've already seen. And I couldn't agree with that more. Which brings us to the Saturn-Uranus squares, which is negotiating, as I mentioned earlier, this change between old and new, tradition and progress. And let me just say that the Uranus and Saturn clashes, squares, happened 3 times throughout 2021. So February 17th was the first exact square. Then we had one on June 14th. And we will have one more at the end of this year on December 24th of 2021. And these squares will continue to impact 2022, especially in the spring and the fall. So we have foundation forming Saturn, who I've spoken about being ruler of Capricorn, but also ancient ruler of Aquarius, in the innovative sign of Aquarius. And we have that tension between Uranus, who is the modern ruler of Aquarius, in the very traditional earth sign of Taurus, Taurus is a little bit more like Saturn. Saturn is our structural system, our bone system, and really wants the foundation to be solid, and Taurus wants that too. Taurus does not like to move fast, and Uranus is sort of the blink of an eye type of energy. And these squares occur every 14 years, and they're really about forcing deep structural changes in society. And of course, with Aquarius, that idea of society, again, is very prominent. And quite possibly my favorite astrologer, Robert Phoenix, in his Gaia series, The 11th House, said, looking at Aquarian periods in history helps to understand that when things change, and they change at a very deep level, there's always this kind of Aquarian force in the shadows and in the background. And we have this revolutionary and rebellious energy that comes out. Now, the Astro Twins say, and we've seen it, and I totally agree, that the Saturnian deleveraging of the economy set against the Uranian volatile conditions will impact the growth of the country well beyond 2024. There's also the likelihood of large-scale populist strikes emerging by 2025, protesting the liquidation of America. And of course, we have seen the supply chain backlogs. We have seen large-scale strikes, and we have seen the cancellation of flights. And I believe that this theme will carry on into next year, hopefully to be resolved, but we haven't seen the end of it. So let's look at the first Saturn-Uranus square of the year to give us an idea of what we are speaking to with these deep structural changes. So February 17th, 2021, we had Cuomo in the news, where one of his aides admitted that he hid nursing home data so that the feds wouldn't find out. We had the big power outage in Texas, and there was an issue with the power grid. Again, what really was going on during this time is to be seen, I feel. And then we had the House pass sweeping LGBTQ rights bill. And I feel that that is very much connected to the Aquarian Uranus energy, and we'll continue to see that story evolve within next year. In June, on around the June 14th Saturn-Uranus squares, we had the secret IRS files released, a secret treasure trove of never before seen records revealing how the wealthiest avoid income tax. So again, this power dynamic versus the people, and with Taurus, we're talking about money. And in the article, it said, taken together, it demolishes the cornerstone myth of the American tax system that everyone pays their fair share and the richest Americans pay most. So we'll see what happens with that. Also around that time, we had the news story about the Free Britney movement, where she testified about the control system that she was in her music career with the conservatorship. And astrologer Sabrina Monarch said her story may be touching the collective in the way it is at the moment, because her story also symbolizes the way our culture treats the feminine. And Taurus rules the divine feminine. And Sabrina also says, particularly the raw, messy, wild feminine. Britney has been extracted from in a large number of ways, just as the patriarchal world extracts from the earth. And I just watched the documentary by Liz Crokin called Slave Princess, and she really talks about sort of the Plutonian money dynamics, similar to, you know, how money gets moved to be hidden. And it's not only men that are in charge of this world, women are also involved in this too. So I just wanted to point that out, and Liz Crokin made that clear. So Saturn Uranus, again, during this time, we had the Jeff Bezos flight to space, whatever that was, but the key thing to keep in mind with Aquarius is more of the air focus. So we'll see how that plays out. And then we also had revealed A full list of Western media outlets participating in CCP propaganda, including some of the top sources of news like the Washington Post, Bloomberg, Financial Times, New Yorker, NPR, New York Times, Fox, MSNBC, CBS. So, you know, the revealing and really this idea of the people starting to get riled up now. Also around that time, John McAfee allegedly commits suicide. And of course, the news outlets were saying that it was because he was facing tax evasion claims. But on October 15th of 2020, he had tweeted, "Know that if I hang myself a la Epstein, it will be no fault of mine." And he was also very outspoken about how power corrupts. So I feel like his story is not over, and we will continue to see the role that he plays, whether it's from the grave or not, in the upcoming year and even years. And Grandpa Griffin says, "It is human nature for man to place personal priorities ahead of all others. Even the best of men cannot long resist the temptation to benefit at the expense of their neighbors if the occasion is placed squarely before them. Throughout history, the granting of that power has been justified as being necessary to protect the public, but the results have always been the opposite. It has been used against the public and for the personal gain of those who control." And I just love that quote. And I wish it wasn't true, but I think we all know that this is human nature. So that is the end of part one, and I want to thank you for being here. I know that was a lot of information. I know that it was slightly dark at times and possibly even a little bit scary, but to leave you on a positive note, because ultimately I am optimistic and I am hopeful for what's to come. Just remember that we exist in a field of infinite possibilities. Choice is the most powerful tool we have. So you're always choosing, and you always have that ability, even if it's just choosing how you feel or choosing to strip away things that aren't helping to bring you clarity. So I hope that you keep that in mind. And I want to just let you know that I do life purpose astrology readings. These are 45-minute audio recorded readings that help you to explore your personality from a soul level. So this is what your birth chart would indicate. It will help you understand your mission, your gifts, and your talents in this lifetime. It will help you to learn how to address and overcome any obstacles you're experiencing or patterns that keep coming up for you that may be related to karma or unconscious blocks. And there is also a free 30-minute follow-up that is included with this reading if you have any questions or if you want specific action steps on how to best move forward during this current time. And I'm offering this reading, a webinar special for $99. One of my clients said, "I listened to your reading twice this weekend and I'm so happy with it. I turned to your voice because I've been curious about what's next. Doing everything again the same for another year is starting to eat at me. I want something more. You've given me some guidance and I'm so grateful." If you are interested, you can just send me an email directly to Kristen@KristenAvalos.com. I'll need from you your date of birth, your time of birth and the location of birth. And I will email you your personalized reading within 3 to 7 days of receiving payment. And again, that is a special that I'm running, $99 as a webinar special. I'll try to get you a link below too. I don't have one yet, but if you don't want to send an email and you want to fill out a form, I hope to get that down in the comments soon. So again, thank you so much for being here. Please, if you liked this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment below. Let me know if you have any questions, any comments, any feedback. I know that this is a lot of information and maybe some of it is a little controversial, but I would love to hear from you, and definitely stay tuned for parts 2 and 3 when they're ready. I'll include them in the link below, but I have yet to record them. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you in parts 2 and 3. Bye.